This show is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network.
This episode of the G-Spot is sponsored by PlayBlue, Ireland's favourite adult store. PlayBlue.ie has a huge selection of adult toys as well as some deadly deals. There really is something for everyone, no matter what bits you have or what you're into. Check out playblue.ie today. On this episode of the G-Spot, I was joined by Laura O Mahony. Laura is a stand-up comedian and co-host of the Red Raw podcast with Rob Heffernan. She's also a mother of three and quite possibly the funniest person in Cork. Laura is an absolute scream. She's a gem. She's genuine. She's honest. She was a pleasure to talk to. And I was just really impressed by how open and honest she was. And I know that's going to help a lot of people become more comfortable having these conversations. You know, the more open and honest and vulnerable we are on platforms like this, the more it helps people actually talk about these things in real life. So I'm really grateful to Laura for that. She genuinely was really, really open and just a pleasure to talk to. So we'll be going into some dilemmas as always and talking about some personal experiences. If you're liking the G-Spot, as always, please rate, please review, please share with all your family, all your friends, and enjoy. So first of all, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being here so much.
A pleasure. Delighted to be here.
And I'm happy to have a Cork woman. I've had a few Cork people.
Look, we're all over the place.
Yeah,
I think it's since Cillian won the Oscar, we're definitely getting a lot more
I'm
work.
glad you got that in the first 10 seconds.
You are welcome.
Okay. Can I just add my claim to fame?
Okay, go for it.
So I'm from Kerry, and my dad had a bakery for years and years, and it was a family bakery, O'Shea's bread. And we once saw Cillian buying a loaf of it now. So
oh my God.
Not bragging or anything.
Well,
but
I saw him in the door of the Triskel in Cork, and he had kind of unapproachable written all over him. So I just stayed well away. Yeah. But I think my dad might know his dad. So, I mean, come on.
That's so Irish. I love it. Yeah.
Well, he's like a kigger, like an inspector that goes around to primary schools. And my dad was a primary school teacher. So I'm like, essentially, Cillian is my brother.
Is he?
I think so, yeah.
Oh.
I think so.
Wow.
Now, that might just be a myth.
That's very interesting. Okay.
He definitely was a Vuntor, I'd say.
Yeah.
And now he's a kigger.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say he's retired.
Yeah. Surely.
Even
though you
this
don't know,
stage.
he's very down to earth and whatnot.
Yeah. So that's it. It's terrible. Anytime I come out of Cork, I'm always like, don't do it. But the minute I come out of Cork, it's like, I'm from Cork.
I know.
So annoying. What's wrong with us?
I probably do. I'm from Kerry, but I do that as well.
I think it's just like in case, it's like a safety thing, isn't it? It's like, I don't want you thinking now that I'm not from Cork.
Yeah, exactly. Just remind people.
Ridiculous.
I say when I come into Dublin, like I'm from Kerry, dad's from Kerry, mom's from Dublin.
Okay.
So mom always says I'm half Dublin. And I'm like, okay, I know I don't know how does it work like that, but I'm like, okay, I'm half Dublin. But like the minute I start driving in Dublin, I instantly start making mistakes.
Oh yeah,
like
totally.
I freak.
Yeah.
It's like sort of my DNA actually just starts like flaring all over my body. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do it.
For me, it's hailing a taxi. I could literally be on the side of the road for 2 hours just because my hand won't go up in that way.
No.
I'm just like, this is wrong.
Yeah,
We don't do this outside.
No.
I'm like, come on, Laura, be brave. But look, I made it. I made it here. I was brave.
I'm delighted.
Well, my sister was brave.
Yeah.
She lives in Dublin. She did the hailing of the taxi.
Fair play to her. Yeah, I know it still feels. Yeah, no, I get it. So when you were first asked to come on this podcast, it's about sex, intimacy, relationships, all of that. Was there any hesitancy? Were you like, oh no, that's something I think I'm comfortable with talking about? Or what went through your head?
Well, I suppose I was like, I don't know, am I either adventurous or interesting enough for this? Because I suppose like I would have been massively sheltered sexually always. Okay. I have only ever had one sexual partner. It's my husband. Mm-hmm. And in a way, it was only recently because I was kind of lamenting this fact and I was kind of saying like, you know, you'd be thinking of fellas that definitely were into you, that I just friend zoned or I just assumed weren't into me or it wasn't on my radar or whatever. And I was kind of lamenting this fact. And it was my friend Rebecca actually said to me, she was like, Laura, I think you have a feeling that you've missed out on something. And she kind of flagged it that maybe I haven't. Yeah. She was like, maybe it's a lovely thing that you've only ever been with Shane. And, you know, she says, you think you've missed out on all these kind of wonderful sexual experiences, but actually maybe they would have been horrendous.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you have just missed out on a couple of awkward fumbles. Now, I think I've probably missed out on, I can think of at least 5 wild oats that I definitely should have sowed. But again, I think I was very oblivious because I think I was kind of in my head the friend.
Yeah.
You know, I was the kind of slightly chubby, great crack friend, funny, you know, good looking ish, but I don't think I ever had that in my, you know, certainly not as a kind of in college or anything. I didn't have that sense that I was the one people were attracted to. I had a sense that people thought I was great crack.
Yes.
But then that automatically puts you in that kind of friend character role. Like in my head, I wasn't, we'll say, Joey from Dawson's Creek.
Right.
I was probably, I don't know, I was probably Jen's grandmother. In my head, I was playing. But you know, I always was in that kind of, the chubby best friend role is what I kind of probably put myself in. Now looking back, it's a bit like in Father Ted when the milkman is like, those women were in the nip. It's now like, I'm like, oh my God, those boys fancied me, but I didn't realise. And I just sauntered over that straight into being tremendous pals. And so then once I met Shane, I met him quite young. I was 20 and he was 27. Then in a way, like he hadn't slept with anyone either, which I know is probably quite unusual for him, but he had kind of gone through a lot of, like, you know, his mom had passed away. There was a lot going on with him at that kind of critical time where he'd been doing some of his best riding. And so both of us then hadn't a clue. So I look back at that kind of going, oh, I mean, would it have been better if we were both like quite experienced, or was it lovely that we figured it out together? And in a way are still figuring it out. We've had 3 kids, but we're still figuring it out. So I don't know. I think in a way I feel sheltered, but it wasn't until literally a couple of weeks ago when I was like, well, maybe I didn't miss out. No, maybe this is lovely.
Yeah. It's just kind of how you look at it, isn't it?
It is how you look at it. And I think like, I mean, like what is it that makes me, like, would I like to have slept with these other fellas? I don't think I'd have liked to have had a relationship with any of them, but I just wasn't free in that way. I wasn't, whatever way I had learned about sex, it wasn't something I was kind of free and easy about. I definitely had a misconception about how easy it would be to get pregnant. I think I thought every day of the month you could be, you know, I was one of those ones that was like, that toilet seat is looking like it's going to impregnate me. You know, so I think I had a lot of unlearning to do. And when it comes then time to try, you know, when me and Shane decided that we wanted to have a baby, like suddenly realised, oh my Christ, like the window of opportunity is so small. I could have been riding all over the place for the month, but I was just very innocent, very young, but I don't, possibly because of the way I was taught, but I think I'm okay with that now as a, you know, 38-year-old. I think I'm quite happy that I haven't had, you know, I haven't had much trauma around sex. I have had the trauma of us trying to figure it out and not having a clue.
Of course.
Like I always felt we could have done with somebody kind of in the room going, now that's where that goes. And you're
when I say I'm
there.
A sex coach, sometimes people are like, are you in the room with your whistle?
Yeah.
Being like, yes, well done.
Well done.
You're doing great.
I remember when I had my first baby and I was having a section, this doctor kind of poked his head in the middle of it because I was shaking. You shake when you have a section. And I was shaking uncontrollably. And I kind of said, Shane, I was like, oh God, I'm shaking. And this fella just popped his head in and said, that's normal. And I felt like saying to him, I could have done with you in the bedroom. Just a kind of a consoling person to say,
that's normal.
You're doing a great job there.
Fine.
Because it took us a while to figure out. We were very good at kind of anything but. But then when it came to actually having full on proper sex, we were a bit shit at it. And we kind of had a make or break holiday where it was kind of like, basically Shane kind of looked under my bonnet and was like, how am I going to deal with this? Like, as in we have to figure this out. So we did. So it was kind of lovely that we figured it out together. But also then, like, you just... I don't know. Did I miss out on a few? Probably just 1 or 2 nights.
Yeah, of course. And it's hard to know. You know, it's just the way things happen for you. And like, even just thinking myself, you're reminding me that I had vaginismus for years, right?
I'm convinced I had that.
Right, you might have. I had it really severely. Like, I had to go to the States for treatment. And to be fair, it was very successful. It worked. And then I did have a lot of casual sex in my 20s after that. But actually, what I could have really done with there was that kind of caring, safe partner to figure it out with. I spent I'm not going to say all of it because that would be a lie. I did have some really good experiences, but a lot of it in my early 20s was performing. That's what I was doing. I was performing sex in the way I thought a man wanted me to have sex with him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I would say, so I'm 31 now, it wasn't until I think after I was 25, kind of late 20s, where I really started questioning, what do I actually like? How do I speak up for myself? And this is as a sex educator.
Yeah.
Do you know, this is as someone who at that point was getting more and more even formally educated. You know, but the informal, the real life stuff, the unlearning you mentioned is huge.
And I don't think, like, I remember Googling about vaginismus because I went for my first smear test and the nurse used like the biggest speculum. Big massive yolk, right? No need for this. I'm looking at it going, oh my God, she stabbed me, right? And then she said to me, I'll never forget it. She said to me, have you been abused? And I was like, oh my Christ. And I literally was like, well, only just now there with that massive speculum. She said, I think you, so basically she sent me away and I had to have Valium for it the next day just to kind of ease me out. And they used the smallest speculum. Then there's no need to be going in. And at that, like subsequently have realised that like most people, there's a way in and a kind of a up. But in my case, I'm tilted, so there's no way up. So when she tried to go up, it like hurt me.
Yeah, and then you tense and you tighten.
And I would have fought her, like, but I do think that I probably did have a mild form of vaginismus and that was probably some of the difficulty that we encountered when we were trying to have sex was that it was like I was an inhospitable atmosphere. I was like, oh, I don't know what you're, you know, a bit like a pen coming towards your eye. I'm like, no,
like
get
a
away.
brick wall kind of like,
And so then I think Shane didn't feel comfortable. So there was lots of kind of awkward moments that when it's that private thing, you almost feel like this is only me. I am some sort, this is because I haven't had sex. This is because I'm a big baby. I'm a big virgin baby. And so, you know, there was a lot of those thoughts, but you have them kind of silently to yourself. I wasn't necessarily going to go home to my mum and be like, I think my vagina hates Shane. You know what I mean?
But also it's way too normalised, and I go on the soapbox about this, but it's way too normalised to say to young girls that sex is supposed to hurt the first few times. It's not. And it doesn't need to. And if we had the proper education from a young age about literally even the very, very technical education about how the vagina actually works, how the muscles relax, how it lubricates. Sometimes though you'll need to use lube. The arousal period for women is so much longer than men. We don't have and
none of that. None of that. Like the first time we actually kind of went about it, we had bought I'd say the 80 pack of family condoms. They were extra safe. They were like putting on a bag for life. They were so thick. And they kind of, we had them there like kind of on the mantelpiece waiting. And they were kind of like this pressure, we must get around to doing this because we were together a good while before we actually did it. And so then when it had been kind of so built up that when we did it, it was kind of, there was no lead in. It was like, right, you put that in there now. And it was terrible. And we had this kind of sensation of, have we done it? I don't think we did. I don't know. And so there was a lot going on. And like, interestingly, my mum, who like, when my mum was telling me about sex first day, she kind of said it was a precious gift from God not to be opened until your wedding day. Okay. They were both primary school teachers. So, you know, it's of its time. They were teaching it through a kind of Catholic ethos or whatever. But she's a great woman for upgrading. Because when I was going out with Shane then and she realised that he was going to be, you know, 8, she pulled me into her bedroom and she was like, it needs to be good for you too, you know, Laura. And I was like, oh, what's happening? What's happening? And
fair play to
she just said, any bit of dryness, KY jelly, and she walked out of the room.
Nice.
But I really appreciated that she did kind of upskill with me. The initial telling was a kind of cautionary tale of don't you dare miss when I was young. And then as she realised, you know, this is the emphasis for her was that it would be good for me, which I suppose I hadn't really heard Radical. And considering that she was a primary school teacher, you know, like who they're taught how to teach religion in that,
of course,
religion and sex kind of weirdly mixed in together. So the fact that she was able to upgrade in that sense was like, I will definitely stand to me when I'm talking to my own kids about it. You know, that she was kind of, she was able to take a rather staunch stance and then she softened it as it kind of became like it was happening not in front of her.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It kind of reminds me of that phrase, when we know better, we do better.
Yeah.
And that, that idea of a parent coming from a different generation completely, like growing with you.
Totally,
and
yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
like,
and
my parents are similar, particularly my mom, she's actually always been quite open-minded, but even she has learned so much more of it. Like, she read my book.
Yeah,
she was
yeah.
like, I didn't know half of this.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I didn't, and I was writing it. And it's funny when you mention actually the God language there. And obviously, again, generational, totally get it. And I'm not anti-religion at all, each their own. But I do a lot of reading around purity culture, as they call it, in the US, which is very they have all these abstinence programs that don't work. You're more likely to get pregnant and get an STI if you're in those programs.
Yeah, wow.
Statistically. But there is a link between that purity culture, as in not giving away your, that you're devaluing, or that as she said, maybe in a nicer way, I guess it's a precious gift not to be open, but whatever way you put it, there's a link between that and vaginismus, actually.
No way.
In different countries where there is a strong conservative religious presence, there are generally higher rates of vaginismus.
It's so interesting because it's obviously connected with it in some way being a bad thing.
Oh yeah.
And that, so it's like your body is protecting you from the bad thing.
Exactly, and that's what it's doing. It's just shutting down. It's just protecting us. I often compare it when people are trying to understand it. I'm like, if a bit of food goes down your throat the wrong way, your throat closes up, it tries to get it out.
Yeah.
It's like your body thinks, oh, no, we don't want anyone. It's so intimate. It's so vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah.
Like letting someone inside your body when that's what you're doing. So, it kind of makes sense.
It makes total sense. And I have no qualms with how it was presented to me.
Yeah.
Like, as in, mom and dad have been amazing to, and they totally embrace Shane and everything. But there is still a boundary. Like, I'm not going to, me and Shane are not going to be riding in their back bedroom. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is still a kind of a respect there. And with 3 children now, anyone to be inside the room with us, there's no chance. But as in they, the fact that they were willing to kind of upgrade and go, and they were willing to let me stay over in Shane's apartment and all that. Did they maybe think we were in separate beds? They probably did. But do we all kind of have a general understanding that that's not what was going on?
In the back of our...
We probably do.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like I have any hang-ups about it now at all.
Oh, yeah.
And I do feel like I won't be putting it through that chasm for my own, that prism for my own children.
Yeah.
There's no need. God is not involved.
No.
God's not involved in this.
It's grand.
I have my own feelings about God, I have my own belief system or whatever. If he doesn't need to know about my sex life, I don't think.
No.
That's not for you, God. Go into another room there a while.
I saw a really funny tweet recently, and it was like, if you believe in a God, and again, totally open to whatever people believe in, if you believe in a God who created billions of universes, do you really think he's worried about your dildos?
Yeah.
And I just thought it was the funniest thing. I was like, let's break it down.
Yeah, it's so true.
Who are you hurting using a sex toy or masturbating or having sex before marriage?
Exactly.
Like, it's just, like, if they're your beliefs, that's fine, but it's just like...
But you're definitely not, you're not hurting anyway. And I think there's a certain amount of unlearning for me now when we'll say my little girl is 9, nearly 9. So we're going to start coming into that territory of needing to explain stuff to her, whatever. And I think I have to be careful to not imbue it with any sort of shame.
Of course.
And particularly around masturbation and stuff for my 2 boys and for her. Why do I automatically think the boys would be at it more than she would? But I have to be careful there because already my little smallie, he loves to hold his willy, and I'm already a bit like, get your hands off your willy. And in my head, I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's just for private. Maybe.
So you say it's private, but then you're kind of like, oh God, or he sometimes comes over and he'd be like, clearly leaning his head against my boob because it's my boob, not just because and he'd be kind of flicking it. And I'm like, what do I do in this situation? So I'm really conscious of being at the start of their kind of sexual journey with them and wanting the right things to come to the fore for them, wanting them to know about consent and respect and all of that, but also enjoyment, because I think it definitely gets left out. It gets left out.
It does.
And my kids are talking about having crushes and stuff already, and that was me. When I was in junior infants, I swear to God, I fancied every single boy in my class.
Yeah, me too.
I fancied Ray Darcy, I fancied Jerry Ryan, Ian Dempsey, you name it. If they were on RTE, she fancied them. Gay Byrne was on the front of the RTE guide. I was like, yes, please. I was always mad for a celeb, right? Yeah. But it's like, I see that emerging in them. I see that they have great. Even now, there was an amazing moment the other night. I was so proud of it. We were watching Dancing with the Stars, and Arthur was on, the judge,
Yeah.
and Brian was on as well. It was in the final. And I said to my son Alfie, who's only 6, I said, oh, that's their husbands. And I said, they have a little girl or whatever. And Alfie kind of went, but how do they have a baby?
Yeah.
And I was, in my head, I kind of panicked, but my mum was there and she just explained it so simply. She explained surrogacy really simply. It was a kind of a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And then Alfie just kind of moved on. And I was like, oh my God, like, as in, even for those things to be in his head now, but to not be taboo, to not be weird. And even to see my mum, his granny, who was 70, casually explaining surrogacy to him, something that she might have only kind of come up to speed with in the past couple of years. I just thought, yes, this is good.
Yeah,
this is,
that's amazing.
He's aware. He knows that the world is full of like different options. They're all available to him. And I just was like, okay, this is good. This is good. Now, I felt like I didn't succeed in that moment, but my mom did. And I was like, okay, this is, we can do this. We can navigate this together, all of us.
But that's a learning moment for you then.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
a little bit of education
and I was
for
like,
you.
go on, Mom, you're so cosmopolitan. I'm so pleased with you.
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's great because, as you said, you just tell him and he just goes about his day.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with kids.
Yeah. Just answer what they're asking.
There's kind of this hysteria over, if you tell them about gay people, they're going to be gay. I was like, number one, what's wrong with being gay?
Yeah, yeah.
And number two, that's not how it works at all.
I always think of this psychologist, he used to be on the radio, called David Carey. Unfortunately, he passed away just at the moment I needed him the most, when my kids started kind of moving into like tantrums and stuff. But he used to always say, answer what you're asked, which I think is so important, because I'd be inclined to go too far.
Yeah.
Alfie might say something to me like about, if he asks like, how do you make a baby? I could suddenly end up talking about blowjobs. Do you know what I mean? And then be like, oh shit, I've gone too far. So like,
and they're just looking at you like,
he's like, I really just wanted to know why we have a baby.
Yeah.
So like, you do have to just whatever is being asked in the moment, but I suppose you have to ask that. You have to answer that truthfully. But briefly. They don't need the full paragraph.
No.
It's age appropriate. He's 6, He doesn't need to know about blowjobs a while.
I know. Yeah, no. Yeah, we'll leave it off for a while. We'll leave it off for a while. Quick personal story for you. It was 2014 and I was in the United States of America for the first time ever, as I'd just gone over there to get treatment for vaginismus, and part of my recovery was to really level up my relationship with self-pleasure. So my mum, who brought me over there, being the legend that she is, paid for my first sex toy because I was 21 and had zero cash. I got a gorgeous pink toy from a very, very well-known multi-award winning brand called Lilo. That's Lelo. And when I tell you, it was my best friend for years. In fact, the only reason I actually had to get rid of it in the end is a different story for a different day. But here's a hint, make sure your pets can't get near your toys. Anyway, Lilo and the pink vibe still going strong today. The Lilo Live 2 is a gorgeous, high quality luxury toy. It can be used for clitoral or G-spot stimulation. And of course, she's waterproof, rechargeable and made of silky smooth silicone. You can get the Lilo Live 2 from playblue.ie at 10% off using the code GRACE10. Enjoy!
This show is part of Headstuff Podcasts. Here's another show you might like.
Hi, I'm Gerard Farrelly.
And I'm Niamh Kavanagh.
And we have been friends for a very long time.
And we regularly solve each other's problems. And now we'd like to solve yours in our podcast, Agony Rants.
It's a weekly show where we offer you unwavering support.
It's true. And it's the place to go if you need a place to vent or to get thoughtful advice.
It's a serious lawsuit waiting to happen.
Now, Grode, there isn't a problem that can't be helped by having a comedian and a Eurovision winner dissected before your very ears. Agony Rants is 40 minutes with two friends who just want to listen to you.
Niamh wants to listen. I dip in and out.
Agony Rants has a new episode every Monday and you'll find us wherever you do your listening.
So I think this leads nicely into our dilemma, right? Speaking of parenting, parental privacy predicament. Okay, fabulous. Hey, I'm 28 years old, female, and I'm in a tricky situation that's making me feel incredibly awkward. Thanks to the housing crisis, I'm back living with my parents, and while I appreciate their support, it's had a huge impact on my sex life. When I lived away from home, I had an active sex life. I would enjoy one-night stands and also casual relationships. I have a high sex drive. Sex is super important to me, and none of this has changed just because I've moved home. I want to occasionally have the house to myself so I can invite someone over without worrying worrying about interruptions or awkward encounters with my parents. My room is not near theirs, so they're unlikely to hear anything, but they would easily spot someone coming or going from the house. I'm imagining like poking through the curtains. They are somewhat conservative. I'm sure they know I have sex, but we've never discussed sex. I never got any talk, in inverted commas, talk from them when I was younger beyond a vague, be careful. The thought of communicating this to my parents makes me die inside. I've always been private about my personal life and I can't bear the idea of having to discuss my sex life with them. But I have to do something as I've no idea how long I will need to stay here and can't just put this really important part of my life on hold indefinitely. I know it's a normal part of adult life to want privacy and intimacy, but I can't shake this feeling of embarrassment. How do I approach this conversation with my parents in a way that's respectful and doesn't make me feel like I'm making them uncomfortable or invading their space?
Oh, God.
Tricky one.
It's
Very
really
tricky.
And I'm alarmed at my initial thought. My initial thought is, would you go on away with yourself? You're 28.
Right.
Like, book into a hotel.
Yeah.
You know, like as in...
Yeah, finds another option.
Do we have to have this chat with the parents?
Yeah,
Like, it's so hard because... It's obviously respecting the fact that you're living in your parents' home.
Yeah.
That is unfortunately a circumstance thing. It's not your choosing.
Yeah.
And I understand sex being important to them, of course. But part of me is like, this is your parents' home. I've learned like to accept the older generation. We're not going to change them about loads of things. You know, like as in, you know, even... Sometimes you see like older celebrities or whatever talking about weight and this, that and the other, and you're just kind of like, oh my God, it's so dated. I want to go to war with them. But like my focus would be on changing the future generations that are coming up towards us. So like my kind of old-fashioned thought is like, do we have to have this chat with mum and dad? Are you going to sit down opposite and say I want to have sex in your house with like one night stands?
Well, that's how do I approach this
Don't
conversation?
run away. Get a tent. No, like just like, I mean, if you want to have the conversation, my God, you're brave. But like, I'm just unsure what their answer is going to be, and I'm unsure whether the parents, whether it's a little bit unfair on them, like as in. Look, you might think it's a delight for you to be living with them. Like you might think that they're delighted to have you back, but they're adults as well. They thought that you were going to move on, and now you're living with them, and that's a hard negotiation for everybody. Yeah, and I still think you can have sex, but maybe just in his house or her house, or you know, like, does it have to be in the parental home? Is it just that they want that option available to them?
I'm wondering, is it a thing of, you know, it's all well and good, like say even booking a hotel, right? But you'd want to be fairly sure you're going, it's expensive. Like, are we, then that's very much a sex date. We're going to, and that's fine. That's fine. But I'm wondering, is it a thing that maybe she wants to go out on a date, and if
a spontaneity thing,
if it happened, you know, is there any chance that now and then someone could come back? That's kind of the vibe I'm getting. Like, I suppose where I'm at with it is
tell me,
ultimately it is the parents' house, and I do agree with that, and whatever they say has to be respected. But I think it's no harm having some kind of a conversation. Maybe you don't want to go in all guns blazing and talk about your sex life. Yeah. But you could talk about dating. You could maybe peel it back a bit, like, you know, I really appreciate your support. I know it's not ideal for you that I'm here either. You know, as you know, I'm not in a relationship. I would have liked, like, I would have dated a bit. I would have liked to have gone out on dates. I'm just wondering, you know, how would ye feel if I were to spend some time ever, you know, alone with someone that I'm dating, you know, kind of keep it a bit more, rather than I want to bang in your house regularly.
Do you mind if we bring all
and it's going to be loud, so can you leave?
I think it's probably a boundaries thing.
It is.
So
it is a boundaries thing,
They need to check what their parents' boundaries are.
Exactly.
And so if they're conservative, potentially their boundaries are, don't you darken this door with anybody.
Yeah, they said somewhat conservative.
Somewhat. Okay, well, somewhat
which is vague.
There's room for manoeuvre in somewhat.
Be.
And maybe it's a discussion around privacy. Like, you know, they said that their room is far away from the parents' room. Is there also maybe another entrance? Like, could they, you know, could they annex a bit of the house? This is their sex side of the house. No, but like, is there, is there another doorway so that it isn't actually encroaching at all? I mean, the parents don't have to know that they're having sex. It could be that they're having a lovely cup of coffee and watching Netflix. But like, movie night again.
Sleepover.
Oh, it's a different person coming to movie night. I think it's really hard. I think it's a really hard thing to do. Part of me thinks it is an unfair question to ask of the parents. I feel if they were, is this old fashioned? Like if they were with a boyfriend, that is a different thing. Then you're asking a different thing. Can my boyfriend stay sometimes? We're in a committed relationship. I think it's harder to ask, can I have the option to have casual sex in your house? And would you mind popping to the cinema for a few hours while we do it?
I know.
Like, I hate that I have that old fashioned thought, but I just think in the parents' own home, they're entitled to whatever stance they want. Yeah.
And that's what I go back to again, that it is their home. I think we shouldn't assume that they wouldn't be okay with it. You never know.
Yeah.
As you said, our parents, you mentioned, your mom has, did you say update? Is that word?
Upgraded as she went along.
Upgraded.
She did.
Updated. And they could actually be thinking, God, she's 28, somewhere in the back of my mind, their mind, they probably are thinking, this is an important part of her life. It's her 20s and she doesn't want to be here. We don't want her here. Probably, maybe they do. I don't know.
Like, but in my head, they're two tiny little old people, but actually they might only be in their early 60s or, Like, everyone's, obviously, parents are different. I'm just thinking of my mom. Like, my mom wouldn't be like, bring everyone over anytime, whatever. But I know, because she was like this when I was 17-ish. She was like, I don't mind boyfriends staying over. Okay. I'd rather you be in the house than in a field somewhere, which I think is really, really good. I think it's really, you're giving someone a safe... Now, I was younger then, so it's a bit different. Like, you're giving someone a safe space to spend time alone with their partner, because they're going to do it anyway. Probably if they're in a relationship at 17, 18, so she was like... It's interesting. I don't know where I fall on that.
Yeah,
now,
that's fair enough.
It's because I have a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old and a 6-month-old.
Yes.
So my head hasn't really gone there yet.
Of course.
I'm hoping that I will also upgrade.
Yeah,
at this moment in time, I'd be like... not in our house.
Yeah.
But then, well, what's the alternative? Is my little girl going to some other family then?
Yeah.
Is she going to his house?
Yeah.
You know,
interesting.
like, do I want that? Do I want her suddenly really close with her partner's family and a bit of a gap opening up between us? I don't.
Yeah.
So it's,
That's a
and
good
I
point.
think actually my husband would probably be more progressive than that. He'd be like, let them be here. Whereas I think I'd probably need to go out if it was occurring.
Yeah?
Yeah, just head off.
I'm just thinking these parents could be like, we want to have sex. Would she ever fuck off out?
Could we do it at the same time?
Do you know?
We'll have a sex
Could
hour,
we have
guys.
a schedule?
Friday night, 7 o'clock. But also, they may, something you said there, they may be going, she's 28, why isn't she with someone?
Exactly.
So, like, they may actually be beside themselves with worry that she's not forming a bond, and maybe they'd be delighted. Maybe they'd be more than happy to oblige. If there was a way to discuss it in a way that they could be like, hey, we're going to Kerry for a weekend break, you know, that is the permission. I think having to sit down and explicitly say, I'd like to bring partners back here is tricky.
Yeah.
But maybe just a general question around your social life and all of that.
Test the waters a bit with that, I think.
See how it goes. Because you don't know how long you're going to be there. If you're in a financial situation, you could be there for years.
That's the thing. And I know this is a bit of a side note, but I really, really feel for people in this situation.
100%,
like, I was by no means... I'm still not wealthy, but I certainly wasn't wealthy in my 20s, and I did live out of home, like, had very little money, but I was able to live out of home.
Yeah.
That was so important, Jesus, to me as a young adult, as developing all of...
Because it's so difficult. As in...
For everyone involved.
For everybody. Yeah. Because I think I have a notion that mum and dad would be absolutely thrilled if I moved back in. But they wouldn't. Because they're used to their own space now as well.
And I think they'd be worried a bit as well.
They'd be like, this is chaos. You know, even if we stay over sometimes at Christmas or whatever, I can see in their eyes, when are they going home? Do you know what I mean?
I know.
That's totally their entitlement. Yeah. I think you're right. Have some sort of discussion, but it doesn't have to be explicit.
Yeah.
And then if you get it right on, then if you get a kind of a green flag, then go for a green light, go for it.
I used to sneak boys in, very bold. And what I used to do, I feel bad saying this, but my parents are separated. Okay. So at the time they were living, mom had moved out basically, all very civil, but they weren't together anymore. And so when I was staying in the house and dad, and he'd be upstairs but we always had an alarm, like a burglar alarm.
Okay.
So I had to somehow figure out how to turn off the alarm. Right. So I'd put on the kettle and pretend I was doing my hot water bottle and I'd be coughing, beep, 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 beep. setting it. I was shifty out.
Oh my God.
But like,
I was like the Virgin Mary at home in the bed.
But I did that to avoid having the conversation with my dad. Like, I just feel he would have expired having the conversation. I feel like Mom, it would have been a different situation. But why am I telling that? I don't know. Just for a fun clip.
But also, there's no problem in protecting your dad's feelings there.
No, I don't think so. I don't think anything good could have come of that conversation, personally.
Like, yes, is it a little bit underhand, but is it for a greater good? Probably yes.
Yeah.
You know, but they don't need all of the details, I don't think.
Yeah.
But equally, you have to respect their house a bit.
Yeah. So look, I would say...
away from Dawson's Creek, essentially. There was fellas climbing in your window on a ladder.
Stop. Not that many now, to
well,
be fair.
I lived in a bungalow, so they would have been crazy to have a
they
ladder.
Were when I think about it. Anyway, but look, you know. I was like, why did I admit that? I hope my dad never listens to it. Even though I think he would just kind of laugh now.
Well,
like,
at this stage,
at this point,
would he be secretly quite proud of you? That was quite industrious of you, I think, the whole fake
Mom,
kettle.
be like, you're gas. I know,
She's a desperate cough, doesn't she?
I know, she's always... And I remember he came in one day and I had been smoking out the window and he was like... is there smoke? And I was like, it's the radiator. There's something wrong with the radiator. He'd someone come in, look at the radiator and everything. I know. And I'm like, oh. But anyway, but he'd die then if I'd said I was like, I never would have heard the end of it.
No. And that's self-protection then.
And yeah. So look, and I just to add as well, one quick thing that like, there's kind of a thread running through this of this embarrassment and I want to die. And I get it. But at the same time, I think if you're going to have... Like, we need to just learn to have uncomfortable conversations. Yeah. Again, maybe not go straight in with the explicit sexual conversations. But like, just because you feel embarrassed doesn't mean you can't have the conversation. You can have a conversation. Yeah. And feel a bit embarrassed. And it could still be a great conversation.
Totally. And I think as well, you need to take a bit of control of the conversation. We're going to be the generation that are trying to undo the kind of years of shame and guilt associated with sex. In order to do that, we have to be vocal about it. Then we have to be vocal when we're passing it on to our kids. Then they have to continue to be vocal about it, so that as it passes along through the generations, the awkwardness and the embarrassment kind of goes a bit, and so that it just becomes another aspect of our life that we're like, we definitely have to be freer with it. Definitely. We're unlearning a lot, but it's like my pet peeve, diet culture. Like, we're unlearning. We're unlearning the whole time.
Spend your whole life unlearning, really.
Oh my God. Like, I was reared on The Swan and America's Next Top Model and all of that. So I'm unlearning the whole time, even though I would still absolutely watch every single one of those programs if they came back on. But I'm unlearning that all of the time. And so my self-talk and my talk to my kids has to reflect that. And I think I need to get there from a sex point of view as well, that you're kind of... I think the older generations are a lost cause, and we just kind of have to accept that. Yeah. Do you know?
Yeah, I think meet people where they're at as best you can.
Totally.
You know, and if you feel it's going to cause more... You know, we don't know a whole lot about this person's parents. Like, if they feel it's going to cause an absolute kind of ruckus altogether, is it worth it? It's just weighing it up. There's no right or wrong answer, really. It's just
be careful of your own boundaries, of their boundaries. Yeah. And yes, it's lovely to be spontaneous, but you know, you might just have to pause it for a while.
Yep. I think actually a lot of people will be in this position where they're living with, as in trying to find a way to make not just sex, but in general, how to make it work. If they're stuck in this position and there's nothing anyone can really do about it for the foreseeable, you kind of have to have some awkward conversations at some point about something.
And just, it's fine. Awkwardness is fine. It's an emotion we have to sit with.
Yeah, exactly. Even though I hate it.
I know, I hate being awkward. I'm often awkward. I'm like, oh my God.
I know.
You know, in your head, you're like, why am I so weird?
I know, but we all are. I think we all say that to ourselves. OnlyFans. OnlyFans opposition. So, dear Grace Alice, I'm a 29-year-old guy in a long-term relationship with my girlfriend for 6 years. Recently, she dropped a bit of a bombshell on me. She wants to start an OnlyFans account. At first, I didn't know how to react. On one hand, I want to support her in whatever makes her happy and helps her feel empowered. But on the other hand, the idea of her sharing intimate photos and videos with strangers online makes me feel uncomfortable and insecure. I worry about the impact it might have on our relationship. So there's a few questions here, not that we have to answer, but I think what he's thinking. Will it change the dynamic between us? Will I feel jealous or possessive knowing that other people are seeing her in ways that are meant to be intimate and private? Will it put her in danger in some way? Will my friends and family see her content? So there's a bit there. I really don't want to be the controlling boyfriend, in inverted commas. We have always had what I feel is a healthy, respectful relationship, and I really don't want that to change. But at the same time, it feels wrong to act like I'm completely fine with it when I'm definitely not. How do I navigate this situation without coming across as unsupportive or judgmental? And how do I express my concerns without ruining our relationship?
Oh my God. Okay.
You've your work cut out for you today.
I feel in over my head. I only had sex with one person.
You don't have an OnlyFans?
Well, actually, I have a very lucrative OnlyFans. No, this is tricky. They've been together for 6 years.
Yes.
I think there might be a little bit of a need for him to establish the why does she want to do this.
Yeah,
okay,
fair. Because we don't actually know that. It hasn't said... Yeah, we don't have a context
Is it
with that.
that she would like to make money?
Yeah.
Is it that it's just something she views as kind of like almost like modeling or, you know, just even like an extension of like an Instagram or whatever? Or is it because there's some unfulfilled need going on in her sexually or whatever? I think maybe a chat around why she wants to do it could be interesting.
Yeah.
Now, with regards to... Like, it's totally her choice, really, if she wants to do it. Just the way, like, if you want to simplify it, like, there are people that are, like, Instagram influencers and they never show their partners. Like, you could equally be like, that's a bit weird. Look, you're one doing TikToks. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I know this is more sexual. I also think he doesn't need to be on it. Like, I don't know, does he need to see it himself?
Right, yeah.
You know, do you need to worry about that? That you're going to...
Yeah.
You're you're peeling a bit of a scab there if you're going to be rooting around in it. Like, if it is for her, I think they have to have the conversation. I think she is entitled to do it if she wants to. But again, he probably and her need to put some boundaries in place about like what is okay and what's not.
Yeah.
You know, and like the danger is an important question. You don't want a situation where she's putting herself in danger or like that there's creeps know where she either lives or whatever. You have to take that into consideration, but I don't know. OnlyFans can be extremely lucrative. Maybe,
of course.
Maybe that's what she wants to do.
Yeah.
They need to have a chat. If it's going to be the making and breaking of a relationship, then I think the relationship has a bigger problem anyway.
Yes.
You know, like, is she doing this? The why needs to be established.
Yeah.
Why does she want to do this?
Yeah.
Can he get on board with that? I wouldn't worry so much about his family and friends. Like, they're quite weird if they sign up for it.
I know.
You know?
I'm wondering, is that kind of a thing of, will the lads tease me?
The lads will probably think you're class.
Will the lads see my girlfriend's, my girlfriend naked or whatever? I'm just wondering, is that where that's
maybe
coming
a bit of
from?
that.
Which is a whole separate point, really. I mean... Yeah, like I think when I see this kind of predicament, because it comes up online a bit, I usually see one of two narratives and they're quite extreme, right? So on one side you have people being like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like, you can't let her go on that. Why does she want to go on that? That's basically cheating and blah, blah, right?
Okay.
So it's a hard no. How could anyone in a relationship do that? And then on the other side, it's almost this, she can 100% do whatever she wants. If you even question it, you're, some level of control. And obviously there's a fear there of being seen as that controlling or
his approach does seem quite considerate. Like, that he doesn't want to seem judgmental or domineering.
It. And that's like human. Like, that's the mix, the way we can feel three different feelings about one situation at a time. And it's like, maybe we need to just find it somewhere in the middle. Whereas, yes, and what you said is true. She can. It is her choice. It's her body. It's her life. It's her money, whatever it is. She can absolutely do it. And... But she is also in a relationship. So whenever we make any life decision, it's just part of being in a relationship that you do have to factor in to some degree. So as you said, boundaries I think would be good.
I think as well, can we flip it for a second? If it was a man wanting to do it.
Yeah.
Something feels different to me about that.
Yeah.
It feels less likely. I don't know why it feels different. There's something less sexual about it or something.
Yeah.
To me, it feels like that's just a kind of a little side hustle, money-making thing he's got going on. You know, like if you were going out with somebody that was a stripper.
I was just about to say,
you know what I
there's
mean?
a complete different view.
That's their work.
Yeah.
And or equally, like if I heard of a celeb with OnlyFans who I knew was in a relationship, in my head, that's all separate.
Yeah.
In my head, that's like being a page 3 model, or it's like...
Right, yeah.
So if you could separate in that way and view it almost as... That's why I think the why she wants to do it is important. If it is a kind of a, this might lead on to this lucrative thing or whatever, you know, maybe she's just a shrewd businesswoman.
Yeah.
But like, I think it is interesting often to look at it the other way, that if it was a man and the girl was having an issue with it, the man would probably be like, oh, it's only, you know, it's only OnlyFans. I'm making money from it. It's great. It's easy. I stick up a picture of, of what?
So is that,
stick up a
I
picture
wonder...
of me Willie and I get a load for it. Like, I mean...
I love it.
I mean, just by calling it a willy,
A willy, yeah, I know.
It's just taking all the sex out of it there and
Exactly.
straight away.
So
I don't know.
But I wonder, is that it's really interesting, and it's something I've thought about before, where men stripping
Yeah.
is seen okay, so if my partner went out to a strip club,
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, don't love it. He
Don't
doesn't
love
like
it.
them anyway.
Yeah,
thankfully.
don't love
so I'm
it.
like, honestly, I could be the cool girl and be like, yeah, you know, but I'm not, I just wouldn't be that comfortable with it for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
And it's not even really jealousy or possessiveness.
No, it's just a bit gross.
It's just this. But if I were to go to like a Magic Mike show, I think he might roll his eyes and laugh a bit. But there's sometimes when it's male stripping, there's a more comedic element to it, and more kind of... Whereas it's just the social context of it. It's so complicated, right? But like, you know, so I'm wondering, when we say, oh, it feels different if the roles are reversed, is that because there's a distrust of men who would be consuming her content?
Yeah.
Or is it a bit about female sexuality and reining that in a bit and slut... I know we're not slut shaming
No,
anyone,
but also a bit of, in his case, kind of a bit of ownership over, which she's my girl, she's nobody else's.
Yeah.
It's interesting because if you went to a Magic Mike show, like, to me, that's like going to see a musical theatre show,
Yeah,
you know?
I know.
Whereas if my husband went to a strip club,
Yeah.
I think that's because there's a chance in a strip club that it could be a bit more up close and personal.
Yeah,
like, that'd be a no-go for me, for him.
It's highly sexually charged.
Yeah, whereas
I suppose.
Magic Mike is a bit like, are we all
Again,
having...
it's a bit gas.
This is a bit gas.
Yeah.
It's back to Willie's being
Yeah.
gas. But no, it is a
Do
bit
they
like...
get their willies out in Magic
I
Mike?
don't know.
I haven't been to
They're
a
certainly
show.
implied, but I think
Yeah.
as well, sometimes a group of women are going to that
Yeah.
to be a group of mad gas bitches
Yeah.
having a night out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not. We're not necessarily going to like lust over the guy.
Yeah,
whereas
yeah.
sometimes the guys are going to lust over the. You know,
It's
a mess. It's
Yeah.
a messy area. But like, he probably has to check in with himself and is he okay with it? If he's not okay with it, they have to have that discussion. As you say, they're in a couple, they're part of a team. They need to figure it out.
Yeah.
She's fully entitled to it, but neither is she fully entitled to take his heart and smash it against the wall just for the sake of doing OnlyFans. Like, there was a chat about it on Bait into Reality TV on Celebrity Big Brother when Ekin Sue, that used to be on Love
tell
Island.
me about that.
She was really defensive about Love Island in general, right? She kept kind of going, oh, stop saying I was on Love Island, blah, blah, blah. Nobody really cared. But she also made a kind of a comment about OnlyFans, that she would never do it and that she thinks it's a disgrace that kind of people do it.
Oh.
Don't know if she said as strong as that, but it was definitely implied that she
Okay.
was disapproving of OnlyFans. And my reaction to that was like, we have no right to disapprove.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lucrative space. It's like, is it other women as well, preventing other women from doing that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
You know, that's always raging in the background as well. Like, we don't like other women to be being sexy, and I don't. It's a really new area, and it's kind of untested in terms of, is that okay in a relationship? I don't know, but they'll just have to figure out for their own relationship if it is okay.
Yeah.
But if it's the breaking of their relationship, I would suggest that there are other causes for their relationship breaking up.
Yeah.
And like, is she doing it to see what his reaction will be, or is she doing because she really wants to
We've
do it?
no idea. That's the
No
thing.
idea.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, girl, just go to
Just
it.
do it.
Just
Yeah.
do it.
Just do it.
And he, like, if his family are signing up for it, they're weird.
People are weird, though.
People are weird.
People are weird.
You need to go talk to your family, my friend.
I've read a lot of dilemmas, confessions, etc. online
Yeah.
about like stepdads signing up to their stepdaughters' OnlyFans and this kind
me.
of fucked up stuff. So I'm sure it happens the other way around as well. But you know, it's just that I think it's interesting in an Irish context
Yeah.
because I think we're weird enough about sex as it is to begin with. And then, you know, it's one thing to become a porn performer where you're actually making films or I don't mean actually making, you know what I mean?
I know what you mean, yeah.
Back in the day, you'd have your VHS tapes or whatever. But now it's like anyone, we could both go home and set up an OnlyFans this evening. And like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying it's, as you said, it's very modern. It's a very modern thing.
It's kind of, it's only emerging. And I think we'll say social media and stuff. I've come up against these problems recently. You know, there's massive things happening in the world. Yeah. And so there are people that want to speak about those massive things that are happening in the world, but they also want to sell their hairdryers or their slippers or whatever. Yeah. And social media doesn't accommodate both together. No matter what, then you suddenly look disingenuous if you're after posting a really tragic video and then suddenly it's like, hey guys, 10% off when you use it. So social media as a space isn't expanding enough to let all of these different aspects in, nuances in. So like OnlyFans is sort of being treated as like a smutty thing, whereas maybe you reform it as it's just another influencing platform. It just happens to be sex related. Like I just don't feel, even though you think social media is moving at the speed of light and everything, I think it is falling down in some areas in terms of like incorporating the world as it is now. Like as in, I mean, I'm just thinking if any of my friends were on OnlyFans, I think I'd be scandalised. But that is the Irish, prudish, shame-filled lunatic in me. Like, I wish we lived in a world where it was like, you go, girl, you get your money, you show them what you want. Like, they are in control of it themselves.
Well,
is
that's
the other
thing about OnlyFans.
You
is
are
that,
putting out what you want to put out.
Yeah, and the money is going directly to you rather than some dickhead manipulative producer in some awful studio. Not that everyone's like that in the industry.
But once you can keep yourself safe. Yeah. Like, obviously, there's lunatics everywhere. So, you know, they can equally sign up. But once you can keep yourself safe, you're in charge of what you're putting out there. I mean, it could be potentially empowering, but are other women going to shout support of women to do that? No, they're not. Because of the fact that women are bitches to other women.
Yeah, well, we're taught to see each other as competition.
Exactly.
We're conditioned, which is ridiculous. And I think a lot of us are copping on and being like, we're not buying into that. Like,
just roar loudly your support. Yeah. Like, I mean, there's enough to pass around. I find that in all industries. Yeah. Like, I've worked in radio, I've worked in acting, I've worked in stand-up. Stand-up is probably the least, actually, but there is girls are pitted against each other. Yeah, you know, but in stand-up it is. It's like there's two, you know, massive female comedians, and you're put up against them, and it's like, no, there's space for us all. Like there's not a finite amount of space. Of course, and so it's the same. Like, imagine if we were like, you go, girl, you get your OnlyFans business. Like that would take away some of the shame out of it. Yeah, again, there shouldn't be shame in it. No, like if a man wants to do it, I think the lads would be like, go for it. Yeah. But the women are kind of like, you want to do that? How cheap of you. Is it cheap, or are you an empowered badass? Yeah. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. They need to have a chat. They do. They need to have a chat. They do. To sum up, they need to talk to each other just in the context of their own relationship.
Yeah. They can listen to this podcast, make notes, do up a series of questions and have a chat.
And and tell your family not to sign up to it.
Thank you so much for being so open and sharing.
Sure, I'm an open
lovely.
book. Tis all I've got. Tis all I've got,
yeah.
girl. Years of fakery. All I've got now is my own realness. I can't be dealing.
It's great. It's great. And I think I just love that you were so honest, even about that. You know, you have only had one sexual partner, and that you had to figure it out together. And I think, you know, a lot of people will need to hear that as well, because they might be in a similar boat.
And I don't think we talk about it. And even for Shane, like Shane was 27, which is quite unusual for a man, I think. But like, you know, he's very open about it. Like we figured it out together. It is a lovely thing. We have 3 children. It was a miracle that any of them got conceived, because things are so tight down there, so resistant. But, you know, we'll always have had that rather clunky journey into figuring out how to do things, but now we're quite good at it. Yeah. Now we're still better at everything, but I'd have to say. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? The full shebang. Sometimes I'm like, Eric, wait.
Yeah, but with kids as well.
We've had our children.
I work with loads of couples who have kids, and it's a whole new area.
You have to
sex
just,
and that.
you have to find a slot. We call it Saturday morning ice lulls.
Nice.
Give the kids the ice lulls and get your business done.
And morning is great. You've energy.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
You know,
Like
there's this whole thing as well about when you're trying to conceive and like you have to do it on a Tuesday evening. It's just like, oh my Christ. Look, we're fine. He's had the snip now, so there's no more conceiving.
But that's something as well we need to talk more about. But
Absolutely.
anyway,
snippy.
we won't have time today. So if people want to message you and say you're inciting hatred, where can they find you?
They can. I'm happy to incite hatred anytime. They
I'm
can
joking.
Find me. You'll get named and shamed because she does that. So I'm on Instagram and Laura lols a lot. And can I also mention my own podcast?
Of course.
So I have my own podcast with Rob Heffernan called Red Raw. And our whole thing is that we're just real and honest, having come from
Cork.
Fake world of Cork and the fake world of breakfast radio. We are now free and unleashed. So check us out there as well.
Perfect. Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
A huge thank you to PlayBlue, Ireland's favourite adult store, for sponsoring this episode of The G-Spot. You can browse through their impressive selection of toys, lingerie and lots more sexy essentials at playblue.ie.
This show is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network, a hub for the creative and the curious. Shows are produced in association with Head Stuff and the Podcast Studios Dublin. Find out more or become a member at headstuffpodcasts.com.